5, 4, and 3, 2, 1, live. Hello, everybody. Hello, Hebrews and Shebrews, and welcome to another episode of the Khalifa Shrugged podcast. Today, with us, we have the privilege and the honor, both Mansour and I, to just a second. I'm just having I was hearing myself, and today we have the privilege to have Amir Avivi with us, the founder of the Bitkhonistim Foundation, one of the most prominent voices regarding the security strategies of Israel. Hello, Amir. How are you doing?
Great, great. You know, in Hebrew we are called a Bitkhonistim, but in English we are known as IDF, Israel's Defense and Security Forum. It was very, very tough for English-speaking people to say a Bitkhonistim.
Yeah,
You know?
well,
so we had to find a name in English.
But the idea in general is people who came out from the IDF and the security forces who weren't so happy about the strategies of Israel, of what's going on, or the discourse about the strategic aspects of Israel. If I understood it correctly, and
No,
you are trying to push your narrative, and I want to dive right in. I know you are a very busy man and a very important man doing what you are doing. So first of all, thank you for what you are doing.
a pleasure.
And for the English speaker people, what in your idea Israel is not doing? We are seeing that Israel is having a great advantage in terms of quality and manpower and arms, but still we're not seeing any victory. And now we're almost closing 2 years from October 7th. So in your opinion, what we are missing?
Okay, so let's put things in context. Israel, was caught by surprise on the 7th of October with a devastating attack of Hamas that stormed our southern border and massacred 1,200 people, raping women, burning people alive, decapitating heads of children. One of the most devastating days in the history of the Jewish people, and certainly the most devastating days since the Holocaust. And Israel found itself fighting a big war on 7 fronts. We were not attacked simultaneously on the 7th of October, but a day after, on the 8th of October, we saw Hezbollah joining the fight. We saw shooting from Syria, from Yemen, from Iraq. At a certain point, also the Iranians were orchestrating all of this, also joined. And we have to remember that when this war started, Israel not only had to deal with so many fronts, but it lacked munitions. Israel gave up many, many ground forces during the years, closed many units, so the amount of forces was not very high. And Israel found itself at the beginning needing to deploy many, many forces to the north to secure the northern border and prevent Hezbollah from attacking on the ground in the north. And it started the war in Gaza by attacking only with 3 divisions in the northern part of Gaza. And the attack was a very, very decisive attack, a very strong maneuver in the northern part of Gaza Strip. But when we finished this maneuver and we started moving units from the north to Gaza, at this point, the US changed its policy, and from completely supporting the war effort of Israel, we started hearing the US saying we want the war end to end. We want a ceasefire. We want de-escalation. Talking about not giving us munitions and so on. And Israel found itself in a very complicated reality where it's very dependent on this stage on American support and also munitions. And Israel started, in a way, slowing down dramatically the pace of war in Gaza, not acting in a way of conquering areas, but doing raids, degrading Hamas, and also keeping the forces fresh for the much bigger war that we thought will be, which is the North, Hezbollah, which is a much bigger organization, more organized, 150,000 rockets and missiles. So Israel moved forward in the war in Gaza on a much slower pace, also keeping the reserve fresh and sending them home at a certain stage around January, February 24. And at a certain point, 10 months into the war, as we were fighting all these fronts, Israel managed to surround Hamas, take over Rafah and Philadelphia, and close their ability to bring endless amount of capabilities from the Sinai Peninsula, destroy their military industries that they were producing rockets and other capabilities. And at this stage, we understood that this is the moment to shift the center of gravity from Gaza to the north. We have to remember that Israel, at the beginning of the war, evacuated many people along the Lebanese border who were sent to hotels, more than 100,000 people, and they were, out of their homes. And the question was, how long are we going to keep them, in hotels and apartments, not in their homes? So it was obvious we had to, at a certain stage, to operate in Lebanon. And then 10 months into the war, as so many preparations were going on, we moved the center of gravity from Gaza to the north. So almost all the units of the IDF left Gaza, went to Lebanon, which means that Hamas had the opportunity to recover, regain control in areas, put IEDs, and booby traps and so on. And Israel focused in the north, and we launched an amazing attack with 5,000 pagers exploding simultaneously, taking out thousands and thousands of Hezbollah commanders and attacking the strategic long-range missiles, and also, of course, attacking the bunker of Nasrallah and eliminating Nasrallah and many, many other commanders. And in a very short period of time, Israel managed to bring Hezbollah on its knees. And due to this success, also the Assad regime fell, because Hezbollah was really the organization that was keeping Syria intact. And the moment Hezbollah fell, Syria fell with Hezbollah. And I remember when we did the ceasefire with Hezbollah, a ceasefire, by the way, that enabled Israel to continue enforcing the agreement, meaning Israel, since the ceasefire in Lebanon, has attacked multiple times, because again and again Hezbollah is trying to rebuild itself. More than 230 Hezbollah terrorists have been targeted since the ceasefire. But the day of the ceasefire, Prime Minister Netanyahu said something that I think most of the people didn't listen to. He said, we are signing a ceasefire with Hezbollah, with Lebanon, and we are shifting our center of gravity to Iran, not Gaza. And indeed, in that moment, the whole center of gravity of the military industries, of the army, Mossad, all of it moved towards preparing for the biggest challenge Israel has been waiting for decades. This is the challenge of Iran. And I can tell you that what Israel developed in the last 7-8 months before the attack on Iran is beyond imagination. We developed capabilities that bend the laws of physics and chemistry, capabilities that will give Israel an edge, not only in this war, which we won in 12 days, 50 years ahead, over any country in the globe. Really amazing achievement. And indeed, at a certain point, Israel launched this amazing attack on Iran. In 2 days, destroyed their air defense and took over the Iranian skies all the way to Tehran, opened the corridor to Tehran. And Israel managed to really set back many years the nuclear program and also the ballistic missile production capability Israel targeted almost all the scientists that were dealing with the secret projects and the leadership of the army of Iran. And only when the war in Iran ended, in a decisive win, for the first time in the last almost 2 years, Israel was really able to shift the whole center of gravity to Gaza.
Amir,
So
I have a question for you. But before that, I think it's very important for the people also to understand, because not everybody knows the Bitkhonistim or the Israeli Security Council, or the name that we gave it in English. Can you tell a little bit, because I know you have an impressive background as well from the IDF, from your activity. Can you tell a little bit about yourself so people can understand where you're coming from?
Sure. So, I come from a family that has been living in Israel 15 generations. My family arrived to Jerusalem in 1620, expelled from Spain, went to Saloniki, and from Saloniki to the old city of Jerusalem. All my family was born in Jerusalem, me too. But when I was born, as soon as I was born, I found myself moving from country to country with my parents. My father became a diplomat at a very young age. He was an officer in the paratroopers. He fought in the Six-Day War in Jerusalem, liberating Jerusalem. And then he joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And our first mission was in Italy, in Rome, then Ivory Coast. So by the age of 5, I spoke Italian, French, and Hebrew. We came for a short period of time to Israel and moved again, this time to South America, 5.5 years, Chile and Argentina. So really the main 3 years I had in my childhood in Israel was from my bar mitzvah at the age of 13 to 16 in Jerusalem. And then we moved again. We went back to Rome. I graduated there from a British high school and came back at the age of 18 to Israel as a lone soldier. My parents were still in Rome, to join the army. I joined the combat engineers and found myself serving 30 years in the IDF, in the combat engineers, in many different positions. I got to be battalion commander of Battalion 605 in Operation Defensive Shield in 2002, April 2002. At that time we had multiple attacks of suicide bombers all over Israel. And Israel said, okay, that's it. After 2 years of attacks, we launched the operation in 2002 in the area of Judea and Samaria in the West Bank. And I remember, I found myself fighting with my soldiers, the fiercest fight I've ever experienced in my life. Day and night, fighting again and again against terror. And after 10 months, the soldiers were, exhausted. And then the army said, you have 3 weeks to organize, you're going to 10 months more. And this was, it was tough. And I spoke with my soldiers, 800 soldiers. And as I'm speaking with them, I found myself asking them a very strange question to ask an Israeli soldier. How many of you have ever in your life been in Jerusalem? And I found out half of my battalion has never stepped foot in Jerusalem. And the other half were in Jerusalem, but half of them have never been in the Qatar, the Wailing Wall. So, I understood that I have really great kids. They have zero understanding what they're fighting for. They don't know our history. They're not connecting to the story. So in the 3 weeks I had, I took 1 week and took my whole battalion to Jerusalem.
Wow.
To Ir David, to the Kotel, to the tunnels, to the new neighborhoods. I took them to the Knesset. And in the last day, 800 soldiers sat at the president's house and spoke with the president of Israel. And I can tell you that when this battalion went back to the battlefield, it was a completely different battalion. They excelled in combat to such an extent that 3 months into the fight, the chief of staff calls me to his office. The chief of staff was Bogi Yelon. And he asked me, Amir, what's going on with your battalion? How come they're fighting, so well? I said to him, it's all about spirit. It's all about really connecting to why you are fighting. And this was
if you allow me just to interrupt a bit, because you said Saloniki, and I think this says it all. I've read If This a Man by Primo Levi talking about the Saloniki community in Auschwitz. Those were the most vicious and most, like, the strongest Jews you would ever see. And I really admire these people from this book. So I think this captured the spirit that, or the background that you come from. But if you will get back now, well, if we see like the in positive things of what happened in October 7, as you said, there are remarkable achievements. We have great spirit. People get like awakening from, the blunder of just sitting in cafes in Tel Aviv or things like that. People are very well connected to the spirit of Israel, but still, now you said the Boogie Alone, and Boogie Alone just released a video saying we need to achieve a ceasefire, and we get back to the same old tricks of let's get a ceasefire and that's it. Let's get done with it. So how does it make you feel?
Not good, I must say. I think that what differs us in IDSF, all the generals and commanders, we always talk from a stance of values, Judaism, Zionism, the love of the country, patriotism, and professionalism. We stick to the profession. And I think that one of the things that happened to many high-ranking officers, they started completely disregarding both the values and the profession, and it's really all political. And once you think, your agenda is politics and not national security per se, then, the way you talk and what you say, that doesn't necessarily align with, the right thinking, talking about our values and national security and the military profession and so on. And I'm very proud, to lead an organization that always thinks professionally and really looks at what is needed to secure Israel for generations to come. We don't mix politics and other agendas, simply safeguarding our country.
Amir, I want to just add something very interesting. From a Muhandas to a Muhandas, part of my service, I also went through the combat engineering. I was in Yahalom, the special unit there, and then later on.
This last week they celebrated 30 years. It was a big event.
Mm-hmm. Huge event, and I know that they're doing the whole combat engineering, including Yahalom, are doing an amazing job. I mean, in Gaza and in Lebanon, and a lot of it is behind the scenes, not getting all the glory, but just saving lives day in and out. I was also an officer for a while in one of the Gdudim under Amir Ulo and Beton, if you know him.
I know them both very, very well.
Yeah, very good.
Amir Ulo has an amazing winery.
Oh, wow.
Which I recommend to go. Very, very nice. And he built an amazing home with a winery and a restaurant, and he's doing really well. And Beton just got promoted to general.
Really? Beton was amazing, man. He was one of my favorite generals, captains in the army. I really love that guy. But I wanna ask you a question, because I think what me and Khalifa sometimes as Druze, as Israeli Arabs, see, and we feel it many times, not all the Jews in Israel, but many of them miss it because they don't speak the language or the culture as good as the Druze. We see strategy a bit different sometimes when it comes to fighting Arab enemies. And especially in Gaza and in other places, we see that we're not always speaking the same language of strength and diplomacy as they understand it. From your perspective now, and I know it's a big question, but what do you think Israel needs to change now in order to win the war in Gaza? Because I tell you why. I'm having a lot of people, and I think I know the answer from my side, but I would love to hear from yours. I have a lot of people that keep asking me, how can it be? Israel is so strong. Look what they did in Iran. Look what they did in Hezbollah. Look what they did, all over the world. How are they struggling so long against Hamas and Gaza, and this war is not finishing? So what do you think Israel should do differently to bring better results with the war that we're seeing in Gaza?
So Gaza is very different from all the other arenas, because in Lebanon with Hezbollah and also with Iran and even Syria, there are very clear centers of gravity that if you target them, you can win decisively fast. In Gaza, it doesn't really exist. The way Hamas built Gaza, all the companies, battalions, brigades of Hamas, they're all local in local neighborhoods. in local towns, and they're all completely independent. Each area has its commanders, all its munitions. There is no logistics. You don't need to move things from one place to another. Everything is in the same place. And it's very hard to find a clear center of gravity. And also, they're very, very radicalized. I mean, it's a bit like the challenge the Americans had both with the Nazis and the Japanese. They fight until the last bullet in many occasions. And
I think
this, and also, if we add two other complications, is one, the hostages. And throughout the war, Israel tried not to maneuver in areas where they are holding hostages in order not to endanger them. And the other thing is, you have 1.5 million, 2 million Gazans, and Israel needs to take a very, very difficult decision. Are we taking over completely the whole area and then applying military occupation on the Gazan people, at least for a certain period of time, or not? Or we'll find another solution. So at the moment, as we were preparing to attack in Iran, the army got a mission to conquer completely 75% of the Gaza Strip, which is a lot. It's 3/4 of the Gaza Strip. Why 75%? Because in the remaining 25%, you have hostages and you have the humanitarian zones where the Gazans are. And the army did it amazingly. The army, as it was preparing for Iran, conquered 75% of the Gaza Strip and cleared it completely. 75% Israel is controlling completely. It's a lot. And now the difficult decisions have arrived. And there were several approaches. What to do with the remaining 25%. Now, conquering this 25%, it's a non-issue militarily. It's not a military dilemma. We conquer 75%. Of course, we can conquer the remaining 25%. It's more about what is Israel's goals in the long term in Gaza. And there were three approaches. One approach said, and this is the chief of staff, he said, look, let's not conquer anything from the 25%. Let's surround them, like take the Israeli border forward to the lines of the 75%, close on this 25%, and then conduct a war of attrition, meaning pinpointing attack all the time on Hamas, raids, but not take over the area. Close on them and say, listen, we can stay like this for years. I mean, the Jewish towns, the Israeli towns are secured. We're controlling 75%. You don't need a lot of forces if you do a war of attrition. You don't need a reserve. And they are in tents on the beach. They are the ones that have to be under pressure, not us. We can manage. The other approach, the completely different approach, was said, no, let's conquer everything. Let's bring, another 2 more divisions, go in and conquer the 25%, and that's it. Israel destroys Hamas and controls everything. And then there was the intermediate approach, and this is what was decided in the cabinet. The cabinet said, no, we're not going to stay just on the 75%. We're also not going to take over the whole Gazan society and control it. We are going to conquer Gaza City. Why Gaza City? Because Gaza City is the last really main stronghold Hamas is still holding. The commander of Hamas, Azadin al-Haddad, is in Gaza City. These are the main forces. This is the symbol. This is the center of government. Let's go in, conquer the Gaza City, encourage the Gazans in Gaza City to move to the humanitarian zone, so they're out of the war zone, and then you'll have all the Gazans in the central camps and in El Mawasi. This is the areas along the shore that will remain, and then Israel will control like 85% of the Gaza Strip, and then it can do a war of attrition or decide to conquer the remaining. And this is also looking at the hostages, minimizing the danger for the hostages. So Israel is moving towards a decisive win in Gaza. The issue is that we are dealing with international pressure. The issue is that there is a big discussion in the Israeli society about the hostages. What do? We want them alive. And Israel thought that by winning against Iran and conquering 75%, this will create enough pressure on Hamas to do a hostage deal. And what can we do? It didn't happen. They're not agreeing to a hostage deal.
Yeah. I think just like you said, one of the problems people don't understand, when we're seeing these videos of children in Gaza from 25 years ago parading in kindergarten saying how they want to slaughter Jews with a knife and drink their blood and I don't know what, now we're seeing these guys fighting us from a kinder age. With UNRWA, they radicalize an entire piece of land with everybody almost there, praying to slaughter and kill. That's why October 7, we saw so many baklawas in the street and were so happy when they saw all the blood. And just like you said, they're working in neighborhood in different pockets under the ground, usually disconnected, because they've learned that the moment that they send a signal out there, Israel identify it and take them down. So they've learned to work against Israel in a way that will make them survive. But that makes it a situation where the war in Gaza became a war until the last blood. These people don't want to give up the hostages. They don't want to surrender. They've been radicalized from a young age. Many of these fighters in these tunnels don't have internet anymore. They don't know what's happening outside. All they know, it's like the Japanese. Remember that story of this Japanese soldier that was found in the jungle? Yeah, in the jungle. He was still fighting the war. 25 years or 40 years almost later, just going, harakiri on everybody, because he was just full on, this is how I'm going to do. I'm going to fight until the last breath. And they've been radicalized so badly, and that's what Israel is dealing with. Now, you mentioned here two interesting options. Which one of these options do you think, should be the approach of Israel? To conquer 75% and siege them, or to completely go around and take over Gaza City?
So I think that the idea of taking over the main stronghold of Hamas, which is Gaza City, it's a good idea. And once you do it, then we'll see what happens. I mean, what dynamics will happen after this is done. Many things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that one of the things that I'm trying to push, and I'm disappointed so far it's not happening, talking about the hostages. Look, today there is no real leadership of Hamas in Gaza. After Sinwar was killed and all the leaders, there is no really somebody controlling seriously Gaza Strip. The decision making is done by Hamas in Qatar, by the ones who are sitting in 5-star hotel in Qatar and they're, not giving the hostages and so on. And I think that if the president of the US would have demanded extradition of all of them to Guantanamo, arrest this terrorist in Qatar, this would have created enough pressure to release the hostages. And this is not happening. And if it's not going to happen, Israel will have to consider targeting them, taking them out of the equation, and then going into the areas where the hostages are. The amazing thing is that the IDF, as we speak, is 10 minutes away from every single hostage in Gaza. Gaza is a very small place. So I think maybe we won't have any other choice but go in, surround the places where our hostages are, and negotiate with the kidnappers themselves, not with Qatar, not with Egypt, but those guys who don't have internet, which you mentioned, Mansour, that are stuck also 2 years with the hostages in the tunnel, okay? Say to them, guys, it's over, the war is won. I mean, Hamas was destroyed. We'll give you some money. Go to the Sinai Peninsula, give us the hostages.
So
maybe we won't have another choice.
But the problem stills like in hand, because the main population is extremely extremist regarding to the Jews, to the Israel. You still have a lot of people. I wanted to mention earlier when Mansour was speaking that in the Judea and Samaria, which is called the West Bank, the support for Hamas only increased since October 7, and we are having, we pay our taxes to the PLO, and the PLO is somehow a Palestinian government, but still having an armed militia. So in this regard, what we should do in the whole case of what is called the Palestinians?
Yes, so I think that, the government at the beginning of the war set some kind of vision. It said, look, the day after Hamas, and there is no day after if it's not the day after Hamas, the day after Hamas, there will be no Hamas, no Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and also not the Palestinian Authority. And then the question is, okay, if this is the case, what will happen? I mean, what's the vision, right? And Israel is pushing with the US two main visions that complement each other. One is Trump's plan for voluntary relocation. Israel and the US are working seriously in coordination with different countries to enable those Gazans who really want to emigrate, and I would say at least half of the Gazans want to emigrate, to have the ability to do so, not be locked in a place they don't want to be. So I project that at the end of the war, there will be many, many Gazans that will choose to leave Gaza, and they need to have a solution where to go, what choices do they have. The other issue is really building an alternative leadership in Gaza and also in Judea and Samaria based on the local clans, the Hamulas, which will manage different cities. I would say there will be some kind of cantonization of the area and creating local leaders that will control certain cities and will coordinate economical issues and security with Israel. I think this is where these things are going, both in Gaza and in the future also in Judea and Samaria. You know, there was a big article in the Wall Street Journal talking about the Hamulas of Hebron. The area of Hebron was saying, you know, we want to disconnect from the Palestinian Authority. We want to be an emirate, a city-state. We want to join the Abraham Accords. They sent a formal letter to Netanyahu calling to be recognized as an emirate.
And Hebron is a stronghold of Hamas, or used to be a very stronghold, a stronghold of Hamas,
Yeah.
which is very interesting.
Yeah, so you know that what is interesting about clans, a clan is a family, right? And you have the head of the family heading the clan, and one of the things that endanger loyalty inside the clan is radicalism. If somebody is more attached to Hamas or Muslim Brotherhood or whatever, is not loyal to the clan. So clans tend to suppress radicalism. You see it, for example, in the United Emirates. United Emirates, you don't see radicalism. And if everybody wants to be radical, they are deported. And they have, you know, a committee that dictates to the muazzins that speak in the mosque every week what they can say, what they're supposed to say. And I want to see the guy that is brave enough to change even one letter of what he is supposed to say.
They're not going to change.
All the speeches sound like Imagine of John Lennon. Peace, love, you know, they're de-radicalizing the society by the way they're conveying the messages. And this is happening today also in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia was in a real danger of falling due to Wahhabism, to their own extremism. So you see in certain areas in the Middle East, countries that deal with how to de-radicalize their own societies. We need to bring these models also to the Palestinian society, because what happened in this society, we brought a vicious, terrible terror organization, the PLO, to rule them. And all this PLO is doing is radicalizing them to such an extent that even the PLO is not radical enough for them. They join Hamas. And this is why, you know, there is all the time a dynamic of radicalism. And we need to do the opposite. We need to de-radicalize the society. Yeah. We need a different solution.
I don't think there are going to be any de-radicalizing anytime soon coming from them. And that's why I think, and I keep saying all the time, that the West should wake up and stop trying to make excuses on behalf of Islam. Let Islam deal with the radicalization. And if they don't deal with it, cut your ties with them. Cut your ties, stay away from them, let them deal with that. I have a very tough question to ask, but before, some people were asking, why am I wearing an apron? So this video is not sponsored by anyone, by the way, guys. This video is basically me and Khalifa bringing to you a very knowledgeable person here to come and talk to you. But the apron is on behalf of all the fathers out there that are making barbecue to their families, just like me, and had to run from the barbecue grill straight here. And that's why I forgot the apron on me. But bringing it down right now to the topic. By the way, if anyone want to find ways to help our channel keep growing and reaching, you can do the like, the share, the subscribe. That's basically the main way to help these voices go out. I can tell you, as a Druze and as a Jew, I did the math. The ratio of Muslims to Jews around the world is 2 billion to 15 million. That's about 127 to 1. The ratio of Muslims to Druze around the world is 2 billion versus 1 million. That's 2,000 to 1, which means every time that we try to put a voice out there, I'm not saying all the 2 billion will come against us, but quite a lot will come and try to not like or not share, and they help silencing our voice. And just as we're seeing issues with the battlefield on the ground, we're seeing also issues with the battlefield on social media, trying to relay messages like that and bring out the true voices and stories that are coming in the Middle East. So that's why I want to encourage everyone watching this video to help share it and help spread it. Now back to Amir, I have a very important question is, and many people are asking that question back home, or around the world. Israel takes Gaza. Israel goes and, crush Hamas, takes Gaza City. What are we going to do with the Palestinians, with the Gazans living there? Let's say some want to leave, the others don't want to leave. Do we want to put them as citizens of Israel? Absolutely not. Do we want to be ruling over them for the next 50 years? I don't think so. So what do you think should be done? That's a tough question, but they're living there. There is humans living there. What do you want to do with them?
So as I mentioned before, Israel is already talking to local clans. In Rafah, for example, you already have a clan managing the area of Rafah. And Israel is building relations with different clans to rule different areas. So Gaza, I think, is going to be like cantonized cantons, the canton of Gaza, the canton of Rafah, the canton of Khan Yunis. These places are going to be managed by local clans. The overriding security responsibility will be Israeli. There will be, I believe, a process of rebuilding Gaza, but all this in one condition, or two. One, of course, that all our hostages return back. And the second condition is a complete demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. No weapons, no danger from Gaza. And then we can talk about economical investments and so on, which will come from the Arab world, and education programs that will be implemented by UAE, Saudi Arabia, in order to do this process of de-radicalization. So these cantons will have to really show that they are able to build new education programs that will change the mindset of this very radicalized society in order to build a normal future, both for the Gaza and for Israelis who live in the surroundings of Gaza.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, to be honest. I don't see any voices of sanity that have a real grip among the society. If I was to suggest a suggestion, I know no one is going to take it seriously, but say a brilliant suggestion, bring the Druze from Syria into Gaza, send the Gazans to Syria, let them live with their own friends, bring the Druze here. The Jews and the Druze can live there. Pita Timzatar on the beach, and tourism will be not a single terrorism will come out of it.
To Gaza and Gaza to Sweden.
Yes, send them over there to be with their cousins and their friends, with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They behave exactly the same. They think exactly the same. They breathe exactly the same. They have the same values. We've seen the same celebration of Hamas when they were beheading and slaughtering Jewish children. Same thing. We're seeing it by Syrian. We're not talking right now just by the Al-Qaeda there.
So I think that it's important to really talk, about the growing alliance between Israel and the Jews. And really the way Israel is helping the Jews in Syria to deal with these devastating attacks of this vicious, regime that is based on ISIS ideology, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And the understanding that we have common interest and also partnership. Israel feels responsibility for securing the families of the Israeli Jews that serve with us in the army and are our brothers in arms. And of course, securing the Jews in Syria, in the southern part of Syria. This creates a big buffer zone between Damascus and Israeli Golan Heights in a way that can secure Israel on one hand and secure the Jews on the other hand. So it's a win-win situation, which we'll have to strengthen all the time and build this long-term partnership.
And if you add to that what President Trump said, that Israel is a very narrow country and it needs more strategic depth to it, and Israel won't go not to Lebanon, not to Jordan, or not to Egypt. So the only place is Syria, and Syria is an extremely large country. It's 185,000 kilometers for 20 million population. So there's a lot of space. and we could, be creative, trying to buy some lands from there. But those extremists are the same extremists that we deal in Gaza, and Gaza is only 365 kilometers. So if we have this large state of extremism in the north, we will have it like a large problem. And add to that, you said win-win. I think it's win-win-win, because add to that the moderate Islamic states like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and such, that they want to diffuse the whole jihadist extremism, because it led to catastrophe, in my opinion. So, okay, wanted to say something, Mansour?
Khalifa, something very interesting about Syria. You said Syria is huge. It's bigger than most countries in Europe, actually. There's only about 20 million living in that huge piece of land. Do you know where all the minorities now in Syria are fleeing? Christians, Yazidis, Druze, Alawites, every single minority that is living there right now is trying to flee to the south. You know why? Because in the south, the IDF is protecting them. So if you ever want to have stability and peace for minorities in that huge piece of land called, Syria, that became the Mad Max of Jihadistan, you need to push the Muslims away. Sorry to say it. The Sunnah, these radicals, need to stay away. Let them play in their own, sand fields and mountains there, and bring these minorities closer to the border with Israel, and maybe start having some kind of ties and relationships with them. Help them create their own security. Because if you have Druze or Christians at the border with Israel, you're probably gonna reduce the terrorist attacks to almost zero. There might be here and there some weirdos and crazy people, but you have that anywhere. So the moment you push the Al-Qaeda, the Al-Jawlani, the ISIS away, you help strengthen the minorities, you end up helping the Christians, you end up helping the Druze, you end up helping the Alawites, the Yazidis, you end up helping them stop having their daughters and children being kidnapped, and also you end up helping Israel create this buffer zone that you're talking about, which will keep these radicals away from the land. And I tell you even what, you're going to start seeing tourism, you're going to start seeing economy there. That's why they hate it, because the moment that you take away from them the minorities and they can't kill them anymore, they have no one to blame in their failures, and they're just going to sink into their jihadist, radical Salafi failure instead of actually doing something good with themselves. The same thing we saw in Gaza. Israel came out of Gaza, gave them Gaza. What did they do? They destroyed all the greenhouses. They destroyed everything we left them there. And they started building a terrorist state that we see until now that is destroying itself. So radical Islam is like a cancer that destroys itself from within, and we just push it away and stay away from it. So I really hope that there will be real leadership that will start seeing that we need to take care of our allies, and we need to also think of our future and what kind of a border do we want? Do we want Jawlani and his guys? No. Right now, Israel, and it's amazing, Amir, you mentioned the connection right now, how Israel is helping the Druze. I just spent a vacation here in Zurich with a Syrian family that fled from Syria, and we met there, and they came and they told me something. Said, so Mansour, do you know how crazy that is? I don't think Israelis understand. We're seeing Israeli flags in Syria. Like for them, as Syrians, it's unheard of. They wouldn't even dare to say the word Israel. They keep saying Palestine sometimes because they're still afraid of the word Israel, because people get arrested for just saying the word Israel there. And now we're seeing flags being put in Syria by Syrians who are coming and saying, Israel, please save us. You have Arab villages in Israel that you will not see an Israeli flag. Citizens, they won't see a flag in their villages. We're seeing it in Syria. That's a huge step of the people there coming and saying, please help us. We want to be your allies. Please stand with us. And I think Israel needs to continue doing that. Israel is doing the right thing. That's amazing. I think Israel is the only country in the world right now that is actually actively standing to protect minorities in the Middle East, because there is an ethnic cleansing that has been happening here for years under Islam. Look at all these minorities, they will cease to exist in 50 years from today.
So you guys have talked a lot about the Sunni radical axis, and we have also the Shia radical axis of Iran. And the way to counter them is really winning this war against the Muslim Brotherhood of Hamas. And Hamas is the generator of radical Islam, Sunni Islam, and really moving towards building a Western Israeli moderate Sunni alliance with Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, an alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia, Malaysia, and will really be able to counter both axes, the radical Sunni axis we talked about and the Shia axis. So that's three axes all the time we're dealing with. The moderate one, which allies itself with Israel, and the West, the Sunni radical and the Shia radical. And we need to build an alliance, a coalition that will really embrace all the forces that want to fight radicalism and balance the Middle East, stabilize it.
And be a role model of how to establish a state that actually benefits its own citizen and not get it to a death cult. Amir, it is a true pleasure hearing you and learning from you all about it. I wanted to ask you about the starvation, the so-called starvation in Gaza, but our time is coming to an end. If you have, like a last message or something that you want to promote for your own good, so this is the time.
So one thing I want to say is that, Israel is fighting a just war, an existential war. It's moving towards a decisive win. And I can tell you that the bigger the win will be, the more decisive this win is going to be, the greater the golden age of Israel and the Jewish people will be the day after. The day after the war, there will be peace agreements and the economy is going to bloom. There will be massive immigration to Israel, Aliyah, and really a bright future for Israel and for the minorities, because when Israel is strong, the Jews are strong. Other minorities, the Christians are strong. And we will make sure that really Israel becomes and he is already today, a very strong regional power, but even a global one as time goes by. And I'm optimistic. We have more challenges with Gaza. We'll overcome them. We're on our way. And when this war will end, we'll see a very, very amazing future for Israel.
Inshallah.
Amen.
I share your optimism. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your good work. And everybody, like and share, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.